Sonia was sobbing. On her wedding night, marrying an old man, he went to the bathroom. When he came out, she turned pale. But before we continue, please write in the comments which city you're watching this video from. Enjoy listening. Sonia grew up in a small village. Her family, father Ivan, mother Maria, and younger brother Alexei, lived in a constant struggle to survive. Ivan fixed neighbors' barns or helped on farms when called. Maria sewed late into the night, hunched over an old sewing machine under the dim light of a lamp. But the money was barely enough for bread, potatoes, and meat on holidays. As the eldest, Sonia knew hunger from childhood. At 16, she first skipped dinner, claiming she wasn't hungry, so Alexei, thin and always sick, could have her portion. She sat by the window in the evenings, staring at the dark silhouettes of trees, dreaming of a day when her family wouldn't have to count pennies. Work in the village was scarce. Young people left for the city, and those who stayed clung to any chance to get by. Sonia and Alexei tried to find something, but their efforts crashed against the world's indifference. Ivan often said, "We'll manage. Just stick together." But Sonia saw his back growing more stooped each year, her mother's eyes more tired. She knew if nothing changed, their life would remain an endless cycle of poverty. Despite their hardship, Ivan and Maria believed in the power of knowledge. "Study, children," they said. "It's your ticket to a better life." Sonia clung to those words like a lifeline. Her efforts paid off when her school secured her a free university spot and a stipend. Leaving for the city, Sonia felt a spark of hope for the first time. University was a new world. Lectures, books, noisy corridors. She studied economics, dreaming of one day starting her own business and pulling her family out of debt. But reality was harsh. In the city, connections and money mattered more than a degree. Sonia returned home with a suitcase and shattered hopes. She got a job as a cashier in a store. Shift after shift, she stood at the register, smiling at rare customers and counting change, realizing her dreams were slipping away again. Alexei struggled too. After finishing school, without higher education, he could only find odd jobs, unloading sacks or shoveling snow. Their poor family's past hung over them like a shadow, scaring off anyone who might give them a chance. Sonia saw her brother clench his fists, coming home after another rejection, and her heart ached. Sonia was a beautiful girl with long chestnut hair and clear gray eyes that radiated kindness. But her beauty didn't help in love. Men in the village looked at her with pity or indifference. "Who'd marry a girl without a dowry?" the neighbors whispered. Sonia dreamed of a family, a warm home free of fear for tomorrow. But whenever someone showed interest, the conversation quickly turned to her poverty. Once, a guy from a nearby village, Sergei, invited her for a walk. They talked about trivial things, laughed, and for a moment, Sonia believed it was the start of something more. But a week later, he vanished. Then she heard from his sister. "He said he can't handle such a burden." The words cut like a knife. Sonia locked herself in her room and cried until she fell asleep. Alexei suffered too. Girls rejected him as soon as they learned he came from that family, living in a rundown house. "We're not worse than others," Alexei would say, gripping her hand. "We're just unlucky." Sonia nodded, but deep down, she felt loneliness becoming her companion. One day, Mikhail appeared in the store. He was over 60, with gray hair and deep wrinkles. He came almost daily, buying bread, cheese, or milk, always leaving Sonia a generous tip. His lively, attentive eyes looked at her with an odd warmth. Sonia grew used to him as a regular customer until one day he lingered at the counter longer than usual. "Sonia," he said quietly but firmly, "I want to talk to you. Not here. Can I visit your home tomorrow?" Caught off guard, she nodded. The next day, Mikhail arrived with a basket of food and sweets Sonia hadn't seen in months. Ivan and Maria greeted him warily, but he carried himself simply, with dignity. Sitting at their rickety table, he made an offer that left Sonia speechless. "I want you to be my wife. I'm not young, but I have means. I'll take care of you and your family. You'll never want for anything." The words hung in the air. Sonia stared at him, unsure what to say. Mikhail added that he didn't need an answer right away and left, leaving silence and the basket of gifts behind. That night, Sonia couldn't sleep. She lay in her room, staring at the ceiling, thinking about Mikhail's offer. She was 25. He was over 60. She didn't love him, barely knew him, but his promise to save her family echoed in her mind. She remembered her mother crying as she sold her earrings to buy medicine for Alexei, her father coming home empty-handed after being cheated by an employer. She thought of her brother, who deserved better, and herself, her dreams that might never come true. Marrying Mikhail wasn't about love, it was about sacrifice. But wasn't that what she'd always wanted? To do more for her family? In the morning, she found her mother hanging laundry in the yard. "Mom, what should I do?" Sonia asked, her voice trembling. Maria looked at her daughter with a long gaze. "It's your choice, Sonia. But no, we don't want your unhappiness." Sonia nodded, but inside, she already knew her answer. For them, she would agree. Sonia gathered her parents and brother at the table. "I'll marry Mikhail," she said quietly. Ivan frowned, Maria squeezed her hand, and Alexei jumped up. "You don't have to. He's an old man." Sonia shook her head. "He's kind, and he promised to help us. I'll manage." Her parents tried to dissuade her, but Sonia was resolute. "You've done so much for us. Now it's my turn." Ivan sighed, and Maria hugged her, whispering, "We'll always be here." Sonia vowed to endure everything for their happiness. She felt less like a girl and more like a soldier heading into battle. A few days later, Mikhail returned. Sonia wore her best dress, simple but neat. She trembled as she opened the door, but he smiled so warmly that her fear eased slightly. Mikhail greeted Ivan and Maria, shook Alexei's hand, then turned to Sonia. "I'm glad you agreed," he said, kneeling before her. Sonia blushed, her parents froze, and she nodded. He slipped a simple silver ring onto her finger. Behind his calm demeanor, she saw kindness, giving her hope that things might not be as frightening as they seemed. After the engagement, they spent more time together. Mikhail brought gifts to their home, clothes, even a new jacket for Ivan. He told Sonia about his life, how he lost his wife years ago, how he built his business in the city. His voice was low, but gentle, carrying wisdom. Sonia opened up too, sharing her dreams, her love for learning, her family that was her anchor. Mikhail listened intently, nodding, sometimes asking questions. "You're strong, Sonia," he said one day. "Not many could hold on like you." His words touched her, and she began to see him not just as an old man, but as someone she could trust. The wedding was set for a month later. Maria and the neighbors helped Sonia prepare, sewing a dress from old tulle, decorating it with lace. Sonia tried it on in front of the mirror, but each time, her heart whispered that this wasn't her fairy tale. The age difference, his wealth, her sacrifice, it all weighed on her. Mikhail sent money for food and flowers, but Sonia couldn't shake her doubts. "What if I can't do this?" she asked herself, staring out the window. but then she thought of her father, mother, and brother, and her resolve returned. On the wedding day, Sonia stood before the mirror in her white dress, her hair styled, holding a bouquet of wildflowers. Maria approached, hugged her from behind. "You're strong, Sonia. Remember that." Sonia nodded, but tears rolled down her cheeks. The ceremony took place in the village church. Mikhail, in a formal suit, his gray hair shining under candlelight, stood beside her. Sonia gave her consent in a trembling voice, and he slipped a gold ring onto her finger. She sobbed as she walked out, unable to hold back a mix of fear, hope, and grief. The guests thought it was from joy, but Sonia knew the truth. After the wedding, Mikhail took Sonia to his home in the city, a mansion with high ceilings, marble floors, and servants who bowed at her arrival. Sonia felt out of place. Her village shoes seemed absurd amidst the luxury. Mikhail noticed her unease and took her hand. "Give yourself time to adjust," he said softly. That evening, exhausted by new impressions, she asked to retire to her room. Closing the door, Sonia collapsed onto the bed, finally letting herself relax. But sleep wouldn't come. She thought of what she'd left behind and what lay ahead. Suddenly, a strange sound pulled her from her thoughts, a muffled sound of a running water from the bathroom through the wall. Sonia opened her eyes, listening. The sound was soft but persistent, like a babbling brook, louder in the silence of the vast house. She sat up, her heart beating faster. What if Mikhail was unwell? He wasn't young, she thought, recalling his gray hair and slow movements. What if he needed help? The thought pushed her doubts aside. Sonia stood, slipped a light robe over her nightgown, and walked barefoot to the door. The corridor was dark, with only a thin strip of light escaping from under the bathroom door. Sonia stopped, her hand hovering over the handle. She felt like an uninvited guest in this house, this life. But worry outweighed her awkwardness. "Misha?" she called softly, almost a whisper, afraid to disturb the silence. No answer came, only the sound of water grew louder, as if someone had turned the faucet higher. Sonia swallowed the lump in her throat and knocked lightly. The door swung open, and a figure appeared. Sonia stepped back, her breath catching. This wasn't the Mikhail she knew. Before her stood a tall man with thick hair falling over his forehead and piercing, lively eyes reflecting the lamplight. His skin was smooth, without a single wrinkle, his posture strong and confident, like a man in his prime. He looked at her with a gentle smile that took her breath away, her legs weakening. She froze as if time had stopped. Her mind struggled to comprehend what was happening. This was Mikhail, yet not. Her heart pounded so hard she pressed a hand to her chest to calm it. "Who are you?" she gasped, her voice hoarse and barely audible. "Sonia, don't be afraid," he said, stepping toward her. His voice was the same, low, warm, but now it carried an energy she hadn't noticed before. "It's me!" She shook her head, stepping back until she hit the wall. The cold plaster seeped through her thin robe, but she barely noticed. "No," she whispered, her eyes darting over his face, searching for an explanation to this nightmare. "This is impossible!" She wanted to scream, to run, but her legs felt rooted, her voice gone, leaving only a tremble in her throat. Mikhail raised his hands, showing his palms. "Please, let me explain," he said softly, his tone almost pleading. He took another step, and Sonia flinched. His eyes weren't just kind. They were alive, almost youthful. "Sit, Sonia," he said, gesturing to a couch around the corner of the corridor. "I'll tell you everything." She didn't move until he stepped back. giving her space. Finally, summoning her strength, Sonia pushed off the wall and followed him slowly, her legs trembling, each step echoing in her temples like a hammer's strike. She sank onto the edge of the couch, clenching her fists to stop the shaking. Mikhail sat across from her at a safe distance and began. "I'm not who I seemed," he started, looking her in the eyes. "I used makeup and a wig, wore long-sleeved clothes to look older. My grandfather, a wealthy man who died a year ago, left me a will. Not just money, but a request to find a worthy wife. He learned about you, Sonia, and insisted I find out who you really are." His words fell like stones into water, shattering the silence and Sonia's world. She listened, unable to believe her ears. Makeup, a wig, a will. It sounded like a fairy tale, a mad dream she couldn't wake from. She searched his face for signs of deceit, but saw only sincerity in those eyes she'd thought tired and old. "I wanted to know if you'd marry me for money," he continued, his voice faltering as if it pained him to say it. "Or if there was something more in you. And I saw it, Sonia. You agreed not for yourself, but for your family. You sacrificed everything for those you love. That's rare, and I couldn't stay indifferent." Sonia stayed silent, her mind spinning in a whirlwind of emotions. She recalled her tears at the wedding, her fear of the wedding night, her resolve for her family. And now this man, not an old man, but a young one, was telling her it was all a test. Her world flipped in a second, and she didn't know whether to feel joy or scream in anger. "You lied to me," she finally managed, her voice breaking on a high note. Tears she'd held back poured out. "You made me think I was marrying an old man, giving up my life. For what? So you could be sure of my kindness?" Mikhail lowered his head, pain flashing in his eyes. "I'm sorry," he said quietly. "I didn't want to hurt you. I wanted to know the real you, and I saw more than I expected." Sonia covered her face with her hands, trying to stop the tears. Her chest heaved with sobs, her heart torn between anger and an odd, inexplicable relief. She didn't know what to feel, betrayal or hope. But one thing was clear: the man before her wasn't the one she married, and that was both terrifying and strangely captivating. Mikhail continued. "My grandfather met you in the store. You helped him carry his bags to his car, though he was a stranger. You didn't know he was rich, but you smiled and wished him a good day until his last breath. He saw a pure heart in you," Mikhail said, "and asked me to find you." Mikhail wiped off the last traces of makeup, revealing his true face. He was just over 30, handsome, vibrant. "I fell for you, Sonia. Forgive the deception. Give me a chance to be with you for real." Sonia sat in silence, processing his words. She was angry, but his eyes held sincerity. Her sacrifice had turned into a miracle, too much to grasp at once. Mikhail extended his hand, and after a long pause, Sonia placed hers in it. They embraced, and she felt the tension release. He wasn't an old man. He was a man who saw more in her than she saw in herself. Their feelings grew slowly, but now they had a chance to build something real. The morning after that fateful night came quietly, as if nature itself held its breath, watching Sonia's life change. The sun barely broke through gray clouds, casting soft light on Mikhail's mansion. Sonia stood at her window, looking at the dew-soaked grass, trying to piece her thoughts together. The night had turned everything upside down. Mikhail, whom she thought an old man, was a young man, and their marriage a test she hadn't suspected. In her heart, anger, relief, and tentative hope battled. But one thing she knew: she needed to return home, to her parents, to the truth. Let's go to them, she told Mikhail at breakfast, gripping her teacup so tightly her knuckles whitened. Mikhail nodded, his face serious, but his eyes flickering with worry. I'm ready, Sonia. I'll explain everything. He reached out, but she didn't return the gesture, not because she didn't want to, but because she wasn't sure how to trust him again. The drive felt endless. Mikhail's car glided over bumpy village roads, past fields and sagging fences. Sonia thought of how her parents would react, what they'd say learning their daughter married a man who hid his face. Anxiety grew in her chest, and she fidgeted with the edge of her scarf until it frayed. When they reached the old house, her throat tightened with tears. This house, with its peeling paint and worn walls, was her world, her pain, her love. Ivan sat on a bench by the entrance mending an old fishing rod. Maria was in the garden pulling weeds. Seeing the car, their faces lit up with joy. Their girl was back. Sonia stepped out first, running to her mother and burying her face in her shoulder, breathing in the familiar scent of earth and fresh bread. "Mom," she whispered, "I need to tell you something." Ivan approached, hugging her tightly as only he could, and Sonia felt his rough hands tremble. Mikhail stepped out of the car slowly, holding a small bag. He paused a few steps away, watching the touching scene. Sonia realized he was waiting for her permission. She nodded, and he stepped forward. "Ivan, Maria," he began, his voice low and steady, "I need to show you something." Before their eyes, he removed the last traces of makeup from his temples and the wig he'd worn to avoid shocking Sonia from the start. The gray hair vanished, the wrinkles smoothed, and a young man with dark hair and lively eyes stood before them. Ivan dropped his fishing rod. Maria gasped, covering her mouth. Alexei, running out at the noise, froze on the porch, eyes wide. "It's me," Mikhail said, lowering his head as if apologizing. "I pretended to be an old man. My grandfather, a wealthy man who died a year ago, left a will asking me to find a worthy wife. He knew about Sonia, her kindness, and asked me to see who she really is. I wanted to know if she'd marry me for money or from her heart. And I saw she chose you, her family. I fell in love with her for that." Silence hung heavy over the yard. Sonia watched her parents, waiting for their reaction. Ivan coughed, his weak lungs rasping, and stepped toward Mikhail. "You lied to us all," he said sternly, but a glimmer of understanding flickered in his eyes. "Why?" "To learn the truth," Mikhail replied, holding his gaze, "and to give you what you deserve. I promise to care for Sonia, and all of you. Always." Maria wept, wiping tears with her apron's corner. "Sonyashka," she whispered, hugging her daughter, "is this true? Are you happy with him?" Sonia nodded, tears streaming down her cheeks. "I didn't know, Mom. But now I believe him." Alexei approached last. He studied Mikhail, then extended his hand. "You're a sly one," he said with a smile tinged with surprise and respect. "Welcome to the family." Mikhail shook his hand, and the gesture bridged past and future. Her parents were shocked, but Mikhail's sincerity and promises of care melted their hearts. They invited him inside, and at the rickety table where food was once scarce, a long conversation began, filled with questions, tears, and laughter. A week passed, and each day felt like a new page in a book Sonia was just beginning to read. Mikhail wasted no time proving his words with actions. One morning, he asked her to return to the village. "I have something for your family," he said with a mysterious smile, and Sonia's heart fluttered with anticipation. When they arrived, a truck stood outside the old house, workers unloading boxes onto the porch. Ivan and Maria stood puzzled, and Alexei ran to Sonia with a question in his eyes. Mikhail took her hand and led her forward. "This is your new home," he said, pointing to a small but cozy cottage across the road. Sonia froze, unable to believe her ears. The house was modest but beautiful, with white walls where spring flowers already bloomed, clean windows, and a faint wisp of smoke rising from the chimney, a fire already lit inside. Maria pressed her hands to her chest, Ivan coughed to hide tears, and Alexei let out a quiet whistle. "That's not all," Mikhail added, turning to Ivan. "I've arranged for doctors in the city. Your lungs need treatment. It's all paid for. You'll be healthy." Sonia looked at her father and, for the first time in years, didn't hear his raspy cough. He stood, stunned, silent. Maria rushed to Mikhail, hugging him like a son, sobbing, "Thank you. Thank you for our girl. For us." They entered the new home together. It smelled of fresh paint and wood. A teapot, a gift from one of the workers, sat on the table. Sonia walked through the rooms, unable to believe this was now their life. She saw her father settle into a new chair, her mother touch the curtains, Alexei inspect his room with a smile. Her family had a second chance, more than she'd ever dreamed. That evening, Sonia stood with Mikhail on the porch of the new house. The sun set, painting the sky gold and pink, a gentle breeze stirring her hair. She looked at him, his young face, his warm eyes, and thought of how strangely their story unfolded. "I made a choice without knowing the truth," she said quietly, squeezing his hand. "I thought I was sacrificing myself, but it led me to you." Mikhail smiled, pulling her close and hugging her. "You're not a sacrifice, Sonia. You're strength, and I'm grateful fate brought me to you." They became a family, not perfect, but real. Their life had mistakes, tears, deception, but it led to a love that grew each day. Sonia realized their story was a lesson. Kindness, even as small as helping an old man with his bags, always finds its way back. Standing beside Mikhail, she knew their journey